H A Hellyer joins us, a Senior Associate Fellow in International Security at the Royal United Services Institute and non-resident scholar at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. H A Hellyer, thank you for joining us. Peace, the final word there in my introduction about you, sir. In terms of what we're looking at, the idea of peace in the Middle East seems as far off as ever, doesn't it, right now?
Well, it does, but I mean, I don't think it's an all sides responsibility in terms of this whole peace thing. When it comes to the Israelis, it's been very clear that irrespective of whatever Washington, D.C. or London or almost the entirety of the European Union or indeed international global opinion, they intend to go into Rafah. And I think that would be incredibly dangerous. The city of Rafah, that whole area, is one of the most densely populated areas in the world. And even more so now as a result of all of the refugees that have fled to Rafah, fleeing the Israeli onslaught on the rest of Gaza. And if the Israelis further their military incursion, they've already had more than one, but if they do a full-scale invasion of the city, then we're likely to see a mass casualty event, a massacre by any other word. And I think that would be dangerous. It would be catastrophic and obviously a grave violation of human rights and international law. But I think it would also be incredibly dangerous for regional security, and the impact of that on European security quite significant indeed.
Benjamin Netanyahu has made it clear that this will happen, that he wants to go in and eradicate Hamas. And clearly he has his own reasons for doing that, doesn't he? Is it about securing his situation?
I think it's very much about securing his situation. Netanyahu has shown time and again that he's an incredibly cynical politician and will do pretty much anything that's necessary in order to secure his position and avoid, quote unquote, the day after, because the day after this war, there will be an inquiry that will be launched investigating him for the biggest breakdown in security that the state of Israel has seen in many, many decades. But we don't need to get to that point in terms of him invading Rafah if the international community, and specifically the United States and the European Union, but specifically the United States, is actually willing to use the leverage that it has. And it does have leverage beyond words. It has leverage in terms of aid. It has leverage in terms of political cover at the UN. It has leverage in terms of military and arms transfers to the Israelis. It has leverage. The question is it willing to use that leverage? And if not, why not?
Because throughout the 100-year history and more of this conflict, the influence and power of the United States has been one of the most important factors. How far will the US go, do you think? How far will Biden or the next president go to bring peace to the Middle East?
I mean, the record isn't great, unfortunately. We've talked about the US being a mediator in the Middle East for many years. It's not much of a mediation when one side knows that the mediator, quote unquote, stands by it irrespectively, provides huge amounts of foreign aid and military transfers. And the other side, no. And the other side, i.e. the Palestinians, they don't occupy the Israelis. The Israelis occupy them. It's not a two-side situation here. One state occupies a people, and the military occupation of the Palestinian territories has been ongoing since 1967. It has not stopped. It never did stop. And Gaza is a part and parcel of those territories. So I think that there is a chance for a peace process to begin anew, but it would require real leverage to be used in order to ensure that the Israelis move forward within it. And as you said, Israel is currently being governed by the most far-right government in its history. But one thing that we do also have to make clear is that beyond that far-right spectrum, a part of the spectrum, a good deal of the political elite in Israel is not looking for peace, is not looking for a two-state solution, is not looking for an end to occupation. And we have to be very realistic about that.
This is why Israel's not taking part. I'm looking for your opinion, not my opinion. This is why Israel's not taking part in the case at the UN's highest court right now.
What do you mean is not taking? I'm sorry, I didn't
As I
catch
understand
that.
it, Israel not taking part in what's happening at the International Court of Justice right now. The Palestinians giving their evidence, we heard earlier on. Riyad al-Maliki talking about colonialism and apartheid. We heard about the violation of self-determination and the legal status of the occupied territories. As I understand, Israel not being part of that discussion.
Well, they wouldn't be part of that discussion because they don't think that it has any grounding. But I think that this is also very telling. The ICJ is the highest court in the international community, and the Israelis have simply sought to delegitimize it in order to avoid actually fulfilling what the ICJ has told them to do. The same thing when it comes to the UN. Delegitimize the UN as somehow being, involved with Hamas and so on and so forth. The reality is that the international community writ large, including, by the way, the United States, recognizes that Gaza, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem are occupied territories, as well as the Golan Heights and formerly the Sinai, which eventually came back to Egypt as the result of a peace treaty. But the Palestinian territories remain occupied territory, and international law does not admit the acquisition of territory by the use of force. This is why the Russian invasion of Ukraine is so critical in terms of understanding the threat to international order, and indeed Israel's occupation of Gaza and the West Bank and East Jerusalem is also a very clear threat to that rules-based order.
29,000 dead at least so far, Palestinians, since Israel launched its revenge attacks after October the 7th. H A Hellyer, Senior Associate Fellow at the Royal United Services Institute. That's Senior Associate Fellow in International Security. Thank you, sir, for joining us here on France 24. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.